Welcome to the arcade version of the Punisher for the final stage. The first thing we want to do is hide behind this counter. That way the enemies will have a much harder time shooting at us, but we have a pretty easy time shooting at them. So the arcade version of this game is insanely difficult. I'm going to see if I can get through the final stage only using one continue. I'm confident I can at least get to Kingpin with that much. There's one enemy type that appears only here that throws grenades. If you just keep hitting enemies that are on the left side of the screen, then you'll beat them before they show up. It's actually optional to defeat them before progressing, but if you do, you get more grenades that they drop, so there's no reason not to take them out. Just like in the Genesis version, we can configure our attack to end in a dashing punch or a kick. The kick hurts more, the dashing punch pushes the enemies back. We can also still do our tactical roll, but it's way less useful in the arcade version, which is okay. Since the time limit in this version isn't evil, we can actually use our time getting the crowd under control instead of just going on the offensive constantly, which is good, because if the time limit in this version was strict as it is in the Genesis version, then I doubt anyone would bother finishing it. Well, that's not true, because people are insane and they obsessively finish every retro arcade game just to record it for YouTube, but normal people wouldn't bother finishing it. But normal people might not bother finishing the normal version because it's almost as difficult as the arcade version of Final Fight. It is made by Capcom, so maybe that's to be expected, but yeah, Capcom's arcade releases are pretty brutal. The original Final Fight is pretty polarizing for anyone who went back to play it. It's either a classic or, oh my god, why is it trying to eat my quarters so hard, depending on who you ask. And I think it might be the same way with the Punisher, except the Punisher is somewhat less popular. The bosses in the Punisher are also a tiny bit more lenient. Not by much. You can beat some of them using strategies that the average person might think of, but some of them, like the guard droid, are just insanely difficult. You can see that most of the enemy types from the Genesis version are here, and they tend to act the same way and have the same attacks. The issue is that they hurt more, and that they're much smarter. Well, I shouldn't say that's an issue, it's more of a positive. Also of note, the robot enemies do still grab you, but their grabs hurt way more. They destroy over half your life bar, and the grabs are also shorter, thankfully. In the Genesis version, the robot grab slams you 7 times, but for the arcade version, it's only 4. Health pickups in this game are reasonably placed, but in the traditional Capcom style, they're also placed in such a way that makes you go, "Aw, man, if I would have lived just slightly longer, I would have gotten a full health refill." That's the essence of the Capcom beat-em-up. Hey look everybody, it's Scully again. You remember Scully? Well, he works the same way here that he does in the Genesis version, except one crucial difference. The grabs barely hurt him. So I recommend instead throwing other enemies at him or using the weapons the enemies drop on him, which is what you're supposed to do anyway. You also have those handy grenades lying around, but you want to save some of those for the more difficult battles. This is one of the more difficult battles, so, you know, using it here is hardly a waste. You may have also noticed that the knife enemies in this version of the game do not throw just one knife, it's a whole barrage. And that the enemies never stop moving, they are always constantly zipping around the screen. Again, though, I wouldn't call this a negative. Yeah, it's ridiculously hard, but it's ridiculously hard because the enemies are smart and powerful, not because there's so many of them that the timer's going to run out on you. In spite of my best efforts, we do not make it to the end of the elevator section with our first life intact, but we made it through the first hallway, which I think is an accomplishment. Dynamite constantly falls onto this elevator. It takes a while to explode, but we can also pick it up and hurl it at enemies, which obviously we're going to do that whenever we can. Here's a mini-boss. Jigsaw is one of the easier mini-bosses because, well, there's a ton of dynamite lying around to throw at him. Even if you're really bad at this game, or really bad at beat-em-ups in general, you shouldn't have that much issue facing Jigsaw. They give you everything you need to beat him just lying on the floor, literally. Man, the animation in this game is so good, coming from the transition of the Genesis version. Not that the Genesis version wasn't trying hard, I'm sure, but man, this game looks beautiful. So depending on how we tackle this room, we can control where the fellow with the flamethrower spawns. If we stay back, then the guy with the flamethrower will spawn to our left, which is much less difficult than if he would have spawned to our right. Now we have them all up against a wall where they're helpless. If we move too far to the left, then the flamethrower guy would have spawned to our right, and we would have to contend with the enemies on our left and right at the same time, which is much worse. I do tend to meticulously open every barrel, because I want to pick up everything, and I don't want any of it going off the screen where I can't see it. Unfortunately for us, and fortunately, our health is full, so we're going to have to leave that full health recovery behind. Also, fun fact, the flamethrower does almost no damage to the robots, and I just got hit trying to show you that. But that's okay, because the new guy with the flamethrower shows up right during this battle. The robot enemies always drop some form of health pickup, usually cheese, so defeating them however you can is a priority. I mean, you're going to defeat them no matter what, but defeating them first is usually better, because, you know, you want that health. That cheese is giving me flashbacks to Soul Fighter, which may be at least as hard as this game. But when I lose in that one, it makes me cry a little, because I can't put in another digital quarter to continue, and I have to start back at the beginning of the 20-something minute stage. And then I do it anyway, because I like the game. We can use our pistol here, just like we can in the Genesis version, but we can actually aim the pistol ourselves. It still locks on, but it locks on in 4 separate areas, and we need to choose which one we aim at. I like that in the arcade version, there are a ton of breakable items in the foreground as well as the background. The Genesis couldn't quite do that, or maybe it could, but they didn't know how to make it do that. Up here is thankfully a full health refill, so we get to live on this life a bit longer. Like I said, I'm going to give myself one continue to work with, and we still have that continue. I don't know if I'm going to be able to beat the Kingpin, though. This is the last battle before the fight with the Kingpin, and it's actually pretty hard, because you have to fight a Scully knockoff, and a ton of ninja women. And the ninja women are not as weak to grabs as they are in the Genesis version. Plus, you want to get them all up against the wall, like I am right here. But the ninja women can teleport if you give them too much time. And don't worry, I'm not just going to stop the video dead if we can't beat the Kingpin with one continue. I'll just press the continue button again, and I'll do so shamefully. Here are those grenade enemies that again only appear in this stage. I would have liked to get the grenades from them, but avoiding the grenades is top priority. Oh boy, it's time to fight the Kingpin. The Kingpin is thankfully easier than his guard droids, but also way harder than I thought he would be. The safest way to hurt the Kingpin is to throw items or enemies at him, or hit him with weapons. I tend to go with throwing them, though, because you can knock him out of the air if you throw. We still have a continue on reserve, but the Kingpin really is that tough, so I still don't know if we're going to be able to make it. And yes, we can pick up and throw him, but there's a very, very brief window where he's vulnerable to that. He can also block our tactical roll, and I don't think any of the other characters are really good at blocking our tactical roll. Ow, why did he smoke at us? That's very rude. The thing about this fight is that it can be going really well. Also, here's our first continue. The thing about this fight is that it can be going really well because the Kingpin moves slowly, so you're able to throw things at him if you time it properly, and he'll stay back. But that all depends on the Kingpin's patience, because he has a couple of attacks where he can run up and slap you really quickly, just zips across the screen. Or he can jump in the air and do a cannonball on you like his guard droids. And it's not that those attacks can't be intercepted or dodged, because they can, it's just very hard to react in time. The enemies in the Capcom beat-em-ups do telegraph their attacks, it's just that they telegraph them so quickly that you might as well not have seen them at all. So you have to get insanely used to the way the characters behave instead of watching them for attacks. You have to learn to abuse their nature as opposed to your reaction time. So I suppose it's kind of like playing multiplayer in a fighting game, just against a computer instead. And the other player also has way more health, but that's okay because I love that about this. I love that about these games. I like when games try to beat me up, and usually succeed at it. Alright, this is our last life before we have to continue again. I don't know if we can make it, but I'll sure try. That was good right there. Unfortunately, we took a lot of damage, but we also gave the Kingpin plenty of damage. Oh man, we might be actually able to make it with just one continue. He only has like 4 or 5 hits left. This is probably a good time to play cautiously. That didn't go well at all, but I still think I hit him. He only has 1 or 2 hits left now. Maybe 1 hit, we'll see. We'll see. This is, 1 hit left, alright. Shit, that was my chance. I don't see anything else to grab. Oh well, I'll go sit in the shame tube. We almost made it. He had a single hit left. I think that's an accomplishment. Bye, Kingpin.